আসসালামু আলাইকুম সুধী দর্শকবৃন্দ, আপনাদের সবাইকে স্বাগতম। বাংলাদেশ আজ এমন এক সময় দাঁড়িয়ে আছে যখন আমাদের সবচেয়ে বড় শক্তি হচ্ছে আমাদের তরুণ জনগোষ্ঠী। এই তরুণদের আমরা কী ধরনের শিক্ষা দিচ্ছি এবং কী ধরনের দক্ষতা দিয়ে ভবিষ্যতের জন্য প্রস্তুত করছি, সেটাই নির্ধারণ করবে আগামী দিনের বাংলাদেশকে। আজকের বিশেষ আয়োজনে আমরা আলোচনা করব কিভাবে আন্তর্জাতিক মানের শিক্ষা বাংলাদেশের ভবিষ্যৎ প্রজন্মকে আরও দক্ষ, আত্মবিশ্বাসী এবং কর্মসংস্থান উপযোগী হিসেবে গড়ে তুলতে পারে। এই প্রেক্ষাপটে আজকে আমাদের সঙ্গে রয়েছেন কেমব্রিজ ইউনিভার্সিটি প্রেস অ্যান্ড অ্যাসেসমেন্টের একজন আন্তর্জাতিক নেতা। কেমব্রিজ ইউনিভার্সিটি প্রেস অ্যান্ড অ্যাসেসমেন্ট বিশ্বের অন্যতম প্রাচীন সম্মানিত শিক্ষা প্রতিষ্ঠান কেমব্রিজ ইউনিভার্সিটির একটি অংশ। তারা শুধু পরীক্ষা পরিচালনা করে না, বরং স্কুল শিক্ষা, ইংরাজি ভাষা শিক্ষা, শিক্ষক প্রশিক্ষণ, শিক্ষা গবেষণা এবং মূল্যায়নের মাধ্যমে বিশ্বের 170টিরও বেশি দেশে শিক্ষার উন্নয়নে কাজ করছে। সম্প্রতি কেমব্রিজ ইউনিভার্সিটি প্রেস অ্যান্ড অ্যাসেসমেন্ট বাংলাদেশে তাদের কার্যক্রম আরও বিস্তৃত করার উদ্যোগ নিয়েছে, যা দেশের শিক্ষা খাতের জন্য নতুন সম্ভাবনার দ্বার উন্মোচন করতে পারে। আজ আমরা জানার চেষ্টা করব কেমব্রিজ আসলে কী করে, বাংলাদেশের শিক্ষার ভবিষ্যৎ নিয়ে তাদের দৃষ্টিভঙ্গি কী, শিক্ষক উন্নয়ন, দক্ষতা উন্নয়ন এবং কর্মসংস্থানের সাথে শিক্ষার সম্পর্ক কিভাবে আরও শক্তিশালী করা যায়, এবং কৃত্রিম বুদ্ধিমত্তা বা এআই এর যুগে আমাদের শিক্ষার্থীদের কী ধরনের দক্ষতা প্রয়োজন। চলুন শুরু করি। আজ আমাদের সঙ্গে রয়েছেন মিস্টার রড স্মিথ, Group Managing Director, International Education, Cambridge University Press and Assessment. A very warm welcome to you to Bangladesh.
Thank you.
How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Really enjoying
my trip. It's really great to see you here and welcoming you to Bangladesh. And what is your first impression?
Early days, but I've really enjoyed it so far. Early impressions? I think what really impresses me more than anything else here is the kind of commitment to education, to the way that society as a whole here in Bangladesh is looking to the way that it needs to improve education. It's always had a very deep respect for education, but I think actually there's a real ambition and aspiration now around what that can do to help support the ambition for the country as a whole. And I love coming to countries where that's the case.
My first question to you, many people in Bangladesh know Cambridge for examinations, but Cambridge is much more than that. Could you please help our audience understand what Cambridge University Press and Assessment does globally?
Well, look, Cambridge, as you say, you'll know Cambridge University Press and Assessment for its examinations, but actually it's really worth knowing that we're much, much broader than that. So we are part of the University of Cambridge, which is one of the world's great universities, as I'm sure you appreciate. We work in 160 countries around the world, predominantly providing a curriculum and qualifications that hundreds of thousands of students around the world are pursuing. We're actually the world's largest international education provider. You'll find Cambridge qualifications and curriculum and materials in over 10,000 schools around the world, 160 countries, and we're very proudly here in Bangladesh. We've been here since the early 1950s, our first school here in Bangladesh, and we've got some 130 schools now that are following our curriculum and taking our qualifications. But as you say, we're also much broader than that. We're one of the world's leading English education providers. Again, with teaching and learning materials and qualifications and assessment that supports English as well. And we're a world-class academic publisher and journals and research publisher as well. So we have a very broad range of things that we do, and that's incredibly helpful, I think, because it enables us to be able to provide a wide range of support for schools, for teachers, for learners to deliver an effective international education.
কেমব্রিজ নামটা শুনলেই পরীক্ষার কথা ভাবি, কিন্তু রডের কথা থেকে নিশ্চয়ই দর্শকরা বুঝতে পেরেছেন যে কেমব্রিজের কাজ শুধুমাত্র পরীক্ষার মধ্যে সীমাবদ্ধ নয়। তারা পাঠ্য বই, শিক্ষক প্রশিক্ষণ, ইংরাজি ভাষা শিক্ষা, গবেষণা সহ স্টুডেন্ট, টিচার, ইনস্টিটিউশন, পুরো শিক্ষা ব্যবস্থার বিভিন্ন স্তরে কাজ করে থাকে। এখন আমরা একটু বাংলাদেশ প্রসঙ্গে আসি। গত এক দশকে বাংলাদেশের শিক্ষা খাতে যেমন অগ্রগতি হয়েছে, তেমনি বাংলাদেশের মানুষের প্রত্যাশাও অনেক বেড়েছে। তাই আন্তর্জাতিক অভিজ্ঞতা থেকে বাংলাদেশের ভবিষ্যৎ নিয়ে রডের কাছ থেকে এই দৃষ্টিভঙ্গি জানা খুবই গুরুত্বপূর্ণ। রড, Bangladesh is witnessing rapid growth and increasing educational aspirations. From a global perspective, what role do you see education playing in shaping country's future?
Oh, education is one of the key building blocks, the key foundations for any national strategy. And the countries where there's that alignment between what the ambition is for the country, for the skills that it wants to develop, for the role it wants to play in the world economy, to have that aligned effectively with education is one of the key building blocks. And this is an incredibly exciting time for me to be coming here to Bangladesh. We're actually opening a business here, an entity here, and employing a team of 6 or 7 to actually help us build our presence here. This is a very big development for us. And the reason we're here is because I think we recognise that this is a really key time for Bangladesh. It's always been, as I say, has a high ambition and aspiration around education, but I think the new government, with its aspiration and its plan to invest more in education, we're seeing the GDP, the investment in education rising from 1.6 to 2% of GDP, and that really represents, I think, a very exciting and optimistic aspiration for education. But the key thing is not just how much you invest, but it's how clever you are in that investment. How are you aligning that with what the needs of the country are, with how you want to build the economic base or the employment base? And I think, again, what's really exciting about what we're talking about here is the way that education can be used to do a number of things. How can we how can we use education to help young people be globally competitive with the kind of skills that they need to succeed in a global economy, and to be able to respond to changes in that global economy with the kind of new technologies that are coming in? How can we use education to improve things like productivity in the country through the building of entrepreneurial skills, or those skills around helping to build businesses and skills for the future? How can we think about education to help us with building resilience? Some of the challenges that young people are facing now are some of the greatest that they've ever faced, whether that's the impact of climate change or geopolitical disruption, or indeed just the impact of AI and technology. How are we helping to build those skills in young people for them to be resilient and flexible and able to adapt in a world that's constantly changing? And finally, I think, how can we see education as a way of really encouraging innovation? The jobs of the future are jobs we can only envisage at the moment, not understand. So how can we build that kind of flexibility, as I've said, but also that sense of innovation and entrepreneurship that will enable young people to be ready for that future that's changing? Now, all of these things need to be aligned with your overall strategy and developed in a really clear and effective way, bringing teachers on board on that process as well. And that's one of the things we're really keen to see, what role that we can play at Cambridge with our schools, but also working more broadly with government and other stakeholders in Bangladesh.
So it's a total ecosystem. It's not the bookish knowledge, but they need to understand the overall adaptability and staying in that community.
Absolutely right. I mean, I think one of the clear things about the success of education development is that it needs to think about not just knowledge. That's always been what education has tended to focus on. But Cambridge has always been a curriculum that's about knowledge and skills. Those two things, what you know and what you can do. And those two things need to be in balance. And I think, it's that balance of those two things together. But you also mentioned the word ecosystem, and that's incredibly important as well, because you can develop the curriculum, or you can develop the teaching and learning materials, but unless you also develop at the same time your teachers, their capabilities, or have the resources ready to help support those teachers and those students, if you can also bring parents along on that journey and help them understand what it is you're trying to achieve. So all of these things need to be brought together in a coherent way. Now, you see that coherence already in Cambridge schools, the curriculum, the assessment, the teaching and learning, the teacher development. But we're also talking to government and other stakeholders here about how you can bring that coherence into the whole system. A balance of knowledge that you need for the future, but the skills that you're going to need for the future as well.
আমরা প্রায়শই অবকাঠামো, শিল্প বা অর্থনীতির কথা বলি, কিন্তু একটি দেশের সবচেয়ে বড় বিনিয়োগ আসলে তার মানুষকে ঘিরেই। আর সেই মানব সম্পদ গড়ে তোলার সবচেয়ে বড় শক্তিশালী মাধ্যমই হচ্ছে শিক্ষা। এবার আমি রডের কাছে আবার ফিরে আসছি। আমরা বাংলাদেশ কেমব্রিজের কাজ এবং সম্ভাবনার কথা শুনব, শুধু আন্তর্জাতিক অভিজ্ঞতা নয়, স্থানীয় বাস্তবতার সাথে কাজ করাটাও সমান গুরুত্বপূর্ণ। আমরা বাংলাদেশ কেমব্রিজের কাজ এবং সম্ভাবনার কথা শুনব। রড, how do you see Cambridge contributing to the broader education ecosystem in Bangladesh through partnership, teacher development, and local engagement?
One of the things we always talk about with Cambridge is that when you become a Cambridge school or you join a Cambridge school, you're joining a community of schools around the world that are taking the Cambridge qualifications. So we, even in our Cambridge offering, Cambridge schools, this idea of partnerships with other schools around the world, or partnerships where students can make links across the world, is incredibly important. Because we're really clear that actually if you're going to make a difference in education, you're not going to do it by yourself. You'll do it by sharing that best practice around the world, by learning from other people. But also, there's a phrase we use that partnership is the new leadership. Actually, because it's all about coherence across a whole system, you need to be able to work in partnership with your schools and your teachers, but also other organisations in Bangladesh, other organisations that can bring a uniquely Bangladesh perspective to these things.
Exactly.
Again, one of the things we talk about a lot is that an international curriculum is hugely important that it has a global perspective, but to be truly successful, it also needs to have a local focus as well. We talk about being as internationally as necessary, but as local as possible. Now, that local perspective comes from having people on the ground, a team here that we have now in Bangladesh that we've set up with a new business to support that. But it's also working with local partners here in Bangladesh as well, whether that's people with expertise in teacher development or working with the government or other key funding or other stakeholders, because only together by working in partnership can we make the overall difference that's so important to really moving the dial.
থ্যাংক ইউ সো মাচ। খুব সুন্দরভাবে বিষয়টি ব্যাখ্যা করলেন রড। রডের কথা থেকে স্পষ্ট যে কেমব্রিজ বাংলাদেশকে দীর্ঘমেয়াদী পার্টনার হিসাবে দেখছে এবং বিভিন্ন প্রতিষ্ঠানের সঙ্গে মিলেই দেশের শিক্ষা খাতের উন্নয়নে কাজ করতে চায়। বাংলাদেশের শিক্ষা খাতে ইতিমধ্যে অনেক ইতিবাচক উদ্যোগ দেখা যাচ্ছে, আর যখন আন্তর্জাতিক অভিজ্ঞতা এবং স্থানীয় প্রয়োজন একসাথে কাজ করে তখন তার প্রভাব আরও অনেক বেশি হয়। দর্শকবৃন্দ, এখন আমরা এমন একটি বিষয় আসছি যা বর্তমানে সারা বিশ্বের আলোচনার কেন্দ্রবিন্দু। কৃত্রিম বুদ্ধিমত্তা বা এআই আমাদের কাজের ধরন বদলে দিচ্ছে একেবারেই। অনেক পেশা পরিবর্তিত হচ্ছে, আবার নতুন নতুন পেশারও সৃষ্টি হচ্ছে। এই পরিবর্তনের সাথে তাল মিলিয়ে স্কুলগুলো কিভাবে শিক্ষার্থীদের প্রস্তুত করবে সেটাই জানতে চাবো রডের কাছ থেকে। রড, as technology and artificial intelligence continue to reshape the workplace, how should schools evolve to prepare learners for the jobs and careers for the future?
That's a big question and an important question. I travel a lot around the world, and it's one of the questions that I get asked everywhere, as I'm sure you can imagine. I think the thing that we're really clear about, though, is that when you think about technology and AI, you need to think about it not in isolation, but as part of the whole curriculum, the whole learning experience that young people need to have. We don't start with AI, we start with learning. We start with what are the skills that young people are going to need in the future, for the jobs in the future. We start actually with the question around, well, let's not forget that actually foundational knowledge is critical to work with technology and AI. What you mustn't do is almost outsource your deep subject knowledge to AI and technology, because actually that becomes disempowering. Those are the kind of, without the skills to be able to master AI will master you. And so the first thing we talk about is the importance of not losing that sense of the foundational skills around literacy and numeracy, that subject knowledge that becomes the bedrock around which you can build those other skills. Now, AI itself, yes, how do you use it ethically? How do you use it sustainably? How do you use it effectively? So again, people tend to focus a little bit too much on what AI can do rather than what it should do, and actually where you should use it to add value rather than substitute things that are really much better done by human interaction, by the interaction between teachers and learners, between students. So we're very clear about when we think about AI, we think about AI and HI together. AI, artificial intelligence, and human intelligence. You need to develop AI in a very clear and systematic way. It needs to be built into your curriculum. The skills that you need to use it ethically and sustainably also need to be taught. But alongside that, what are the other skills that you need to develop? The human skills, things like critical thinking. How are you evaluating, effectively what AI is producing? How are you then using that to problem solve, where you're framing the question, framing the kind of prompts that you're using AI, rather than just simply regurgitating what is being given to you by AI. And then what are you doing? How are you thinking about how you are communicating and building those outcomes, the findings from AI, and communicating those effectively? We're really clear that communication skills, oracy skills, English skills are going to be one of the most important skills for the future in a world where AI is going to be becoming more and more prominent. So it's all about balance. It's recognizing the huge potential that technology and AI can bring, the way that it can help with personalization, with productivity in schools, which need to benefit as much as anywhere else from AI's impact. But then balancing that with the other skills that will ensure that young people are prepared for a future where AI will not replace them and where they are going to be ready for the world.
This is very important, the way you mentioned about the balance. Sometimes we think that what to use AI, but how to use it is very important. Because if we don't know how to use that ethical ground, moral ground, then the total infrastructure will be impacted.
Absolutely.
এটি সত্যিই চিন্তা করার মতো একটি বিষয়। আমাদের সন্তানরা যখন কর্মজীবনে প্রবেশ করবে তখন পৃথিবী হয়তো আজকের থেকে অনেকটাই ভিন্ন হবে। অনেকেই মনে করেন এআই মানুষের চাকরি নিয়ে নেবে, কিন্তু বাস্তবে নতুন প্রযুক্তি নতুন ধরনের দক্ষতার চাহিদাও তৈরি করছে। আজকের শিক্ষার্থীদের শুধু তথ্য মুখস্থ করলে হবে না, তাদেরকে হতে হবে কনফিডেন্ট, রেসপন্সিবল, রিফ্লেক্টিভ, ইনোভেটিভ, এনগেজড, যা কেমব্রিজ লার্নার অ্যাট্রিবিউট হিসাবেও কিন্তু পরিচিত। আর এই দক্ষতাগুলোই ভবিষ্যতের কর্মজীবনের সবচেয়ে গুরুত্বপূর্ণ হয়ে উঠবে। আমরা আলোচনা শেষ করার আগে একটি গুরুত্বপূর্ণ বিষয়ে আসতে চাই। বাংলাদেশের নিজস্ব উন্নয়ন লক্ষ্য রয়েছে, সরকারেরও বিভিন্ন অগ্রাধিকার রয়েছে। আন্তর্জাতিক প্রতিষ্ঠানগুলো কিভাবে সেই অগ্রাধিকারগুলোর সাথে নিয়ে কাজ করতে পারে সেটি কিন্তু জানা প্রয়োজন। শিক্ষার চূড়ান্ত লক্ষ্য শুধু পরীক্ষায় ভালো ফল নয়, বরং দেশের উন্নয়নে অবদান রাখতে সক্ষম নাগরিক তৈরি করা। চলুন ফিরে আসি রডের কাছে। রড, হাউ ক্যান ইন্টারন্যাশনাল অর্গানাইজেশনস লাইক কেমব্রিজ সাপোর্ট ন্যাশনাল প্রায়োরিটিজ while ensuring program remains practical, scalable and relevant to the local workforce need?
I think that's such an important question. I suppose at one level what Cambridge can bring is the confidence that parents and teachers and young people can have that they're experiencing some of the best education they could do in the world, that we can bring, if you like, the lessons from around the world, that international mindedness, that esteem and trust that 2,500 universities around the world have in Cambridge qualifications. And that's the international piece, the best practice piece that we can bring. But I think that what's really important though is that we also do that in Bangladesh in a way that really works closely with people, with teachers and organisations in Bangladesh. And that's why we've just opened our office here, our entity, and why we're going to build our presence in Sri Lanka so that we can bring many more local partners in. And I think the key area for me, I think if I had to focus on one, is the area of teacher development. There are brilliant teachers in Bangladesh, but there's also a huge ambition about how we can take education even further. And I think to be able to do that, we're going to have to really work, with local partners here on how we help develop teachers and support teachers on that journey. They've got a lot to learn with the world changing in exactly the same way as students have. So I think that for me is the critical thing that we need to get, that balance between international best practice but supporting the local delivery. This is why we're here now. This is why at a really exciting time, I think, for education in Bangladesh, with this real focus that there is on improvement. This is why we're here now. We've been here for 70 years, over 70 years, and we intend to be here for a minimum of 70 years into the future. And I think with the opportunity around education, of growing international schools in Bangladesh, but also working with the government and other stakeholders here to really make a difference to the system as a whole, this is a really exciting time for us to be here. And I think Cambridge can bring a lot to that conversation, but also we can learn a lot, and that is really exciting.
And Bangladeshi audience is also excited with you. আজকের আলোচনায় একটা বিষয় খুব স্পষ্টভাবে উঠে এসেছে। ভবিষ্যতে শিক্ষা শুধু শ্রেণীকক্ষের মধ্যে সীমাবদ্ধ নয়। শিক্ষা, দক্ষতা, কর্মসংস্থান এবং অর্থনৈতিক উন্নয়ন সবকিছুই এখন একে অপরের সাথে গভীরভাবে সম্পর্কিত। বাংলাদেশ বর্তমানে শিক্ষা সংস্কার, শিক্ষক উন্নয়ন, দক্ষতার উন্নয়ন এবং কর্মসংস্থানমুখী শিক্ষার উপর বিশেষ গুরুত্ব দিচ্ছে। আন্তর্জাতিক অভিজ্ঞতা এবং স্থানীয় প্রয়োজনের সমন্বয় ঘটাতে পারলেই আমাদের তরুণ জনগোষ্ঠী দেশের সবচেয়ে বড় অর্থনৈতিক শক্তিতে পরিণত হতে পারে। আজকের আয়োজনে আমাদের সঙ্গে ছিলেন কেমব্রিজ ইউনিভার্সিটি প্রেস অ্যান্ড অ্যাসেসমেন্টের গ্রুপ ম্যানেজিং ডিরেক্টর ফর ইন্টারন্যাশনাল এডুকেশন মিস্টার রড স্মিথ। এ হার্টফেল্ট থ্যাঙ্ক টু ইউ রড for joining us and sharing your perspectives with the audience. ধন্যবাদ জানাচ্ছি আমাদের সাথে থাকার জন্য। আমি সারওয়াত রেজা আজ এখানেই বিদায় নিচ্ছি। ভালো থাকুন, সুস্থ থাকুন, আল্লাহ হাফেজ।